Welcome to Honor Your True Story with Antonia Nelson, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspiring stories of hope, kindness, love, and compassion. Listen in as Antonia's guests share pivotal moments, forks in the road, ups and downs, and wisdom earned on the road of life.
Today, our guest is Lori Andrus. Lori is an artist and a wisdom teacher, and she offers creative and inspiring online programs where she blends her background as an occupational therapist and 2 decades of deep studies in the areas of spirituality, earth-based healing, ceremony, and crystal wisdom. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I was thinking where I first met you, which was, I don't know, a couple of years ago in a class with a lady from Florida that was teaching. And there were probably, I don't know, maybe 20 people in the class from all over everywhere. And as I scrolled down, I'm like, oh my God, she's from Green Bay. She's from where I live, you know, and that's just always surprising because that doesn't usually happen. So I was excited to find that you're right here and what you're doing. And I'm inspired by the beautiful jewelry that you make. I think it's the jewelry that you make really ties in with your work with, with the gems and with the programs that you teach. It really is bringing all those pieces of the earth and spirituality together. And I see that, like I said, in your jewelry, it's certainly there. And been inspired by your adventures in the summer where I found out, well, you and your husband go north. For the summers. What prompted that for you?
It feels like, in some ways, it feels like the most random thing that we could be doing, in that, a lot of times we have visions for life. And I think Chris and I had lots of visions and imaginings and, thoughts of what we'd be doing. And it felt like, is this really what we're doing? And it feels so right, like kind of a question sort of thing. But we've been camping and traveling for about a decade together, and we've long talked about wanting a piece of land. And most of the time we had focused on trying to find a place that would be near the city, that, Chris could work and we could be in the country. And, we had, that kind of a plan. And then COVID happened, and lots of things in my world were shifting and shaking up, and his as well. And, as was happening for everyone. And while we were up north, we were camping at this itty bitty little county park up in northern Michigan on the shores of Lake Superior. And we were just in a place of complete relaxation and awe and ease and flow, and deeply connected as a couple and as, to the earth. And one of the things we kept hearing while we were there was conversations that we were having with people around beginning new chapters. And it was just this repeated phrase. The camp host was talking about her new chapter. Someone camping 3 sites down and talked about her and her husband's new chapter. A cute little restaurant that we fell in love with, that we were frequenting. And we met the owner one afternoon, and he was talking about his new chapter. And the phrase was just repeated over and over and over. And so we started to ask that question: what is our new chapter? Because it felt like we were at a place of a new chapter, and we didn't really know what that was yet. And as we were wrapping up the trip, we kind of just got kind of punchy and goofy and silly, and we're like, well, what if we looked for land in the UP and in Upper Michigan, and we decided to just start scrolling through. I had an app on my phone because I was probably for many years looking for land. And so I had this app like ready when I would be in a place or an area that inspired me, I'd just pull it up. And so we were pulling it up, and we were like, well, where? Because the UP is huge and there's so many different towns and stuff like that. And so we just picked one that we love to visit. And we looked kind of in that area, and the land that we purchased popped up, and we're like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. And we kind of couldn't believe actually what we found. So we decided to kind of rework things. We rework and reorganize our summer and spent some time up there and went to visit. And but in between, we came home and we just sat down in the backyard and we took our questions to ceremony. And the two of us sat together and we invited the next chapter in our life. What's being created? And we got really curious about it. And we opened up the the possibility of land in northern Michigan. For us at the time, there were possibilities, but there wasn't a clear pathway to how we would say yes, what we would do, and it felt, it's just a couple hours away, but in some ways it felt very foreign. And there's a lot of different things about living in the country as compared to living in the city or spending time in the country and in the forest. So we sat in ceremony. We offered gratitude to our home, offered gratitude to the land that we have been stewarding for the past, I think at that time it was like 16, 17 years. And just, put our prayers together and our intentions and our invitation for support and answers and guidance. And we made a beautiful little bundle similar to like a Peruvian despacho. And then I took that to a fire ceremony. And the thing that was really cool about it was that it typically, when Chris and I would talk about things, he'd be like, oh yeah, go ahead, take it to ceremony. That sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. But but this time he sat with me and we did ceremony together. And there was a different level of connection in the process than we've had previously. Like there's always been a deep respect and honoring, but this was definitely a co-creative process. And that, I feel like that has rippled through what has unfolded, that we can create a summer, create our summers spent in the woods or in the forest. So, but from there, we went and checked out the land. We got connected with a realtor. When we drove down the road to the land, it was like there was a raven. The raven would fly through and I'd be like, oh, raven. And then we'd see a sign and it says tranquility, and then an arrow. And then we'd see a pile of rocks that looked like they were put there intentionally, as like, something. It's like someone was working intentionally with the land. And I was like, wow, this is just really interesting. It was like tranquility this way, rock pile that way. And we just kept driving down the road, and we got back to the land, and it was exactly what we needed. It was exactly what matched our gifts. And I think that was one of the things that in the past, when we would look at land or homes or, properties and stuff like that, it was always like, there'd be some really cool places, but the things that we excel at, maybe it didn't need. And the things that we don't excel at, it needed. And so they weren't a match, from that like core of how we can actually serve the land and serve, like show up in a co-creative way. And this spot was like, yep, this is our co-creative ally. It's ready. It's in its right cycle, so to speak, for what we can share and be present with. So, yeah, it's kind of a long answer.
No, I love it. I love it. And, the whole thing, I think of people using whoever could go there Like I just talked to a lady, she and her husband opened a store like during the COVID times, and she's like, oh, I must be crazy. And I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe you just like are right on, just like what all these people were talking about in that time of the new chapter.
Yeah.
To be able to, like, I see this book opening up, and then as you're talking about the ceremony, like, holding this book of like your hopes and desires coming together, and the beauty of that and the power of that also. And is that something in your work? Is that something that you can help people do or teach them how to do with them? Is that something that you can help them with? Awesome.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm imagining that would be around anything that they're looking to really attract into their lives.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like really sinking into, part of it is coming into alignment with what we're wanting and what we're wanting to experience and how we're wanting to experience it. And so much of the work is often on that alignment aspect. Like, how do we, are there pieces that need a little healing and a little love? And is this really what I want? And maybe we need to look a little deeper. And I think what Chris and I realized was that we were we weren't fully opening to, until that experience, we weren't fully opening to what wants to be created in our world. And it was powerful to step back in such a different way. So
yeah, because so many times, like, I'm just thinking for myself, it's in the head, I'm trying to think what it should be.
Yeah.
And, my little head, I always know that everything that's ever happened, there's always been a much better creation that the universe has for me than my little head does. So and you brought up a point that was really profound too, about the houses or the land that you had found previously. It didn't need the gifts that you all have. It already had that. And so you'd have been doing something that really you weren't in alignment with. And isn't that great to go into that, knowing that, versus thinking like, oh, it's just, it's not it or whatever, to really know that it's an alignment piece, that just, I don't know, to me, that makes the process, even honing it more, like, okay, now that we know this, we can bring that to us. So powerful experience. Thank you for sharing about that. Ceremony.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the pieces that comes in around that is that it helps us get clear on who do we need to lean into, and how can we ask for support from certain people and the right people, and celebrate their gifts as well. I think this was one of the things we really, really got to see. And because there are many layers of what it means to live in that area of the country. Like, they still have snow on the ground right now. like there's we were speaking with neighbors this week, and they were telling us they're all kind of migrating from Arizona back to the area, and our UP neighbors were telling us that there's still about a foot of snow on the back road to get into the area, and I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of snow yet. So there's different things that we have learned. It's important to let ourselves receive the gifts of other people in order, and then in turn, be sharing as well. Like, that beautiful dance. How can we work together in unique ways? So, yeah.
Yeah, that collaboration and support is huge, versus trying to do everything yourself.
Right.
It doesn't. Again, if you only have these gifts, you don't have these other gifts, you can try to give it to yourself as much as you can, but you can't. You do need others' help.
Yeah. It's a beautiful dance. It's wonderful to know how to do many, many things. But at the same time, that piece of being able to really focus in on, like, what is our zone? What's our zone of genius? Yeah.
So you also shared when we were talking that, I think it was over 10 years ago, you decided to take a camping trip across the country and camp by yourself. And I remember going, oh, wow, that's awesome. And, part of me was a little freaked out also. That's, my fear. What was the impetus for that? What was the call to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the time, I think I was in a transition. That was 2012. And I had left my career as an occupational therapist. I had run a shop for a year. I had started doing jewelry full time, and I had really done that quite well and quite successfully. I was doing, like yoga events and stuff like that. But I was also really feeling like jewelry was only a part of who I am, a part of the gifts I'm here to share. And I was beginning to recognize that it was a time to, I'm going to say, do some teaching, but it wasn't exactly that. It was about sharing some of the knowledge and the wisdom and finding ways to do that. And I didn't really know what that was or what that would look like. And I was definitely in a place of curiosity around that. I was working with a mentor at the time who just kind of looked at me and she's like, I think you need to like get out and do something a little different than what you've been doing. And I had been traveling a lot, but I knew that there was a part of me that needed nature time, like really, really needed nature time. And I was hiking a lot, but it's different than being immersed in the woods. It's not quite exactly the same. And it was wonderful, but but I knew there was something else there. And the idea of going on a road trip, I kind of just set an intention that I was going to kind of figure some of those pieces out, right? And so I called it my trip to step into my power. Like I find my power, that has many layers of meaning too. But I pulled out this tent that Chris and I had. We received it 9 years earlier as a wedding gift, and we had never used it. Pulled out the tent and I'm like, I'm going on a road trip. And Chris was like, oh, okay, have fun. He just kind of looked at me. He's like, all right. He's like, have a good time. And this was, 2012. Cell phones were pretty good, but not like they are now. I'd be in places where there was definitely not cell reception, and it would be, you know, interesting. But I left Green Bay and drove out to Acadia National Park in Maine, and camped along the way out there and on the way back. And I think, that really prompted, actually, it's interesting because I came back from that, and then Chris had a bit of a readiness to join me in camping. And it's kind of funny because I think the two of us we did lots of really fun things, but there was something about this camping piece. Like he just had no interest in it. And I didn't realize it was the piece that was missing for me in my nourishing of self, and being connected with earth and staying grounded and stuff like that. I didn't realize it until I took that trip. And when I came back, he was in a place where he was just kind of like, oh, I'm ready to reconsider that. And so we scheduled a little trip up to Michigan and to the Upper Peninsula. And we went to Pictured Rocks State Park, or National Park, and spent some time there. And it was profound for both of us. Like after that, we just started camping a lot together. So, which led us eventually to the land. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, and your podcast that I listened to last week, which I think it's
Yeah.
102 for people to listen to it. The quote, well, your podcast is "Meet me in the sacred space," which I love that. And the quote that you shared was, "Into the forest I go to lose my mind and find my soul." So I was listening to that Sunday morning while I was still in bed. I thought, oh yeah, I'll just listen to this now. And that quote is coming up for me throughout the day, for it's been almost a week. It's
Yeah.
continuing to keep coming up. And your podcast was really kind of wrapped around that for me. I really, really enjoyed that. So tell
Mhm.
me more about what, with your podcast, what do you want to offer people, or what are you offering people with this?
Yeah, kind of a combination to really step into a sacred space and sacred space, that we can define that in many ways, but my intention is to really bring in more nature aspects, connection with nature, connection with the earth itself, connection with sacred practice, ritual, ceremony, um, identifying the sacred within, kind of a whole host of layers, and really opening up that space. I will have some interviews in the coming months, probably about one a month I'll have on the podcast. Um, yeah, conversations with other, individuals who are bringing amazing things into the world.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
as are you. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
as are you.
yeah. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I found it very comfort. It was comforting to listen to your voice and what you were talking about. And then I clearly needed to hear that quote, and it's
Yeah. The
really,
quote. John Muir, I gotta say,
yeah, what a
he
guy,
just
right?
right. His quotes are so interesting. And there's a forest, I don't know if you've been there in California, just outside of San Francisco, or oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the other town right now. It's like on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, it's the Jean Muir Forest, and it's a redwood forest, and I think it's a national park. It's beautiful, and they have quotes by him all over, and then they have storytelling about him, and just some of the things, the ways that he lived connected with nature. It's just really inspiring to me. And his quotes, they always have this little rhythmic thing that feels like fun, and there's this depth while being joyful that's really pretty amazing to me. So
It's pretty
yeah.
amazing. And I know you bring up the redwoods, that I have had always wanted to go there my entire life. And
Yeah.
I'm 69 now. I kind of got to a place where I'm like, well, maybe, maybe I'm not going to get there, but I did get there about 6 years ago. A friend and I went there, and I hope everybody on the planet can go to the redwoods, because it is such an incredible place,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
none other,
Yeah.
like none other.
Yeah. Which one did you go visit? Which park did you visit?
We drove from Portland down the coast.
Oh,
So I can't
yeah.
think of it. It was a tiny little town right on the ocean. They have
Okay.
a massive redwood forest there that not too
Okay.
many people go to. And then we drove further down towards San Francisco and went to the one, I think probably the Muir Park.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wow, incredible, incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any cool travel places that are on the docket for you and your hubby?
Right now, we are mostly focusing on our land and being up there. However, that said, you never know when that bug is gonna get us moving. A couple years ago, I think it was 2019, we did a circle tour of Lake Superior. And that sounds a little bit random, but it's very remote, and probably some of the most beautiful scenic highway I've ever experienced was up
Really?
and around there. Yeah. I would probably put that on the like top 5 list of scenic highways that I've traveled. And I wasn't expecting that. People had told me, but you can't, fully understand until you get to a place sometimes. And that was how I felt. But up around Lake Superior on the north side, is near Thunder Bay, Ontario. There are actually amethyst mines, and we went amethyst mining up there, and that's on our list to go back and do again. So, but in addition to that, there's something about Lake Superior that is there's an energetic thing about it that's really incredibly unique. And it's funny because a friend just gave me a book to read, and the book wasn't anything like all that, exciting, but it spoke to a couple pieces that I felt like I experienced on the trip. And they were mystical, magical things that I can't even fully, I don't know that I fully understand. And I think the book kind of left that space too, which I was kind of, I guess perhaps I wanted some interpretation around that. But I think sometimes it's lovely to leave things in the place of mystery and the mystical kind of things. But traveling the North Side, I feel like we had some really unique mystical experiences and awarenesses and understandings that it left an impact. It left for both of us in different ways. So that's on the list to go back up there again. And then I do have one thing that I like, it's not the right time yet, but it is coming. It is coming. I want to do a road trip to Alaska. That is one of the things that I have wanted to do for a very, very long time, probably since I was a child. And I think if 2020 hadn't been COVID, we probably would have done it then. But that just wasn't a possibility because of border crossing and stuff like that. But
Sure.
that's on the list.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I have a friend who has been to Alaska a number of times over the last
Yeah.
number of years, going up there to pan for gold.
Oh,
He
really?
lived up there for a good long time, and all
Yeah.
his stories. And it's just like, I mean, I could sit and listen to him for days telling all the stories, and the polar bears coming to, it's just pretty wild.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it really is. I have an aunt and uncle who live up there, and they've been up
oh,
there since
cool.
the 70s. And I'm pretty sure, based on their stories, it's changed quite a bit where they live. But it's I've gotten to visit a couple times, and it's been enough that it's been like, I want to go back.
Yeah,
The pull
yeah.
is so strong. So someday, hopefully soon.
Cool, cool. Well, I
Yeah,
loved your
yeah.
story about Superior. As you were talking about it, part of me's going, wow, that sounds really cool. It's not so far away from where I am right now.
Yeah, no,
It
it's
would be a cool
not.
thing to at least start exploring part of it. That sounds like a cool thing. And I can
Yeah.
get out to lose my mind and find my soul.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. That was
Well,
actually part of the book was a woman. She was in a big transition, and she took a journey around the lake, and um, that was part of it. And it was like, she did it solo, and I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, uh-huh.
sounds cool. Well,
Yeah,
would you tell our listeners where they can find you so they can
yeah.
explore to see your beautiful jewelry that you have, to keep up to date with what you're doing, how they can find your podcast and the programs that you're offering?
Yeah, yeah. The best place to go is to head on over to my website, loriandrus.com. There's two A's in there. And just start there and follow the breadcrumbs. Um, it's set up really nice. So I'd love for you to join our community. When you sign up, there is a free gift that includes a crystal coloring page. I love to draw and sketch and paint. And so there'll be a crystal coloring page, a guided meditation. It's a rose quartz guided meditation. It's love and gratitude. And then a kind of a little curated collection of some of my favorite podcast episodes on inner wisdom. And so that's a really great place to start. My podcast is available in kind of all the typical places: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, it's probably there. And you can also find me on social media. So
Okay.
just yeah,
So,
yeah.
and your podcast is Meet Me in a Sacred Space.
Meet me in sacred space.
Meet Me
Yes,
in Sacred Space. Okay.
yes,
And
yeah.
with being on today, what is one thing that you would like listeners to take away from hearing you?
Mm. I think a combination of, I'm hearing two things. One is to just go do that thing, whatever that thing is within you that is pulling at your heart, that is calling to you. And that, which kind of leads into the next message, which is to listen within, to really listen to your soul. What is your soul wanting? What is it longing to experience and create and know in this life. Because wow, what an opportunity we have to be here on the earth at this really unique and interesting time. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I would 100% be with you on that. Well, thank you for coming on today and sharing about you and your adventures and the wonderful things that you're doing and offering to the world and to the community. And I look forward to everybody that gets to hear this.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonia. I'm so grateful to be here. It's an absolute joy, and I love that we are in the same town. I think that's so cool.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Honor Your True Story. If you love what you heard, please share this podcast with a friend and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.